All right. Hello and welcome. My name is Elizabeth, and I am the producer at the Kingdom franchise. I hope that everyone can hear me okay. I'm sorry there was a little bit of snag with the sound on the trailer. I hope that sorted itself out. There should not be any more issues from now on. Perfect. And you just let me know if the levels are, good, bad, okay, and I'll sort it out as good as I can. All right. So we have a big week and a few big weeks ahead of us. Right now. It's very exciting. We just announced the release date of Kingdom 80s. As you saw in the trailer that we just rolled, we will be launching on June 26th on Steam, with consoles coming later. And for those of you who are new, haven't heard about this before, Kingdom 80s is a standalone expansion to the Kingdom franchise. It is a single player adventure. It has the micro strategy elements that you know and recognize from the Kingdom series, but it is a linear narrative experience in a single player setting, as I just mentioned, and it's going to be a little bit different, a little bit smaller, but we're trying some new things and we're really excited about them. And we've had the pleasure of working with the man in the box next to me, Andreas Hald. Hello.
Hi guys.
And everyone in the chat, let me know if you can hear Andreas okay. Should be fine, looks good on my end.
Perfect.
So you've been composing the soundtrack for Kingdom 80s, and you're new to the team, but you're a music composer based in Copenhagen. Can you tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually educated as a jazz musician. That's how I started out. And then, long story short, I got an injury back then, and then I started diving into other ways of composing and other ways to make music. And then I just, never looked back from that. And I've been living here in Copenhagen since, I think, 2015. Before that, I lived in Stockholm, actually, where I kind of learned my craft, so to speak, working with some really good composers for film and series and stuff like that. And they learned me much about self-discipline and hard work, and all the things that goes into creating a score for movies and series, but not games that much at that point. And then I moved back to Copenhagen, and I got to meet some great people, and I got the opportunity actually to do kind of a pitch, maybe you can say that, for the Kingdom 80s game, and make some music. I was just being asked how could it sound if you did the music for this one, and then I did, I think, 12 tracks or something like that in the span of a few weeks. And luckily the guys at the Raw Fury, they liked it, so I got into the family. And then I think I've been working on this. You've been working a longer time than me, but I've been involved for more than a year creating the music for this game. So I've spent a lot of time in the Kingdom environment now and with the Kingdom family, even though we most see each other like this online.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a special situation with the Kingdom team, because we are spread over so many places. We have the Raw Fury office in Stockholm, where most of the designers and the producers are located. We have a brand manager in Spain. We have the entire development and artist team in Croatia and the QA team. And then we have you in Denmark. We have the audio guy, Magnus. He is also in Sweden, but in the north. And so we're really spread all over the place by now. It's something that's been, it's a little bit strange, but it's also amazing that it's possible, especially after, COVID, that working like this is possible. I think it's amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of fun. But you have a big day today, because the soundtrack is available now to stream. Finally. And to buy and to listen to. Can you tell the viewers more about where to find that?
Yeah. Well, the first release here is online only, so basically all streaming platforms, wherever you like to listen to your music, I'm sure you can find it. But of course, the big ones: Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, Amazon, YouTube. You can find it all those places. And then I don't know. don't know exactly when, but there will come some physical releases as well. And you kind of know me now, Elizabeth, that I really like physical media and analog stuff. You know, we can just look behind me. So I'm really looking forward to the vinyl release of the soundtrack as well. And also, it will also come on cassette tapes as well.
Wow, that's so old school.
Yeah, and it's gonna be really cool. And it will be released on like limited edition vinyls, like a double deluxe vinyl. And it's gonna be on numbered editions with the translucent magenta colored vinyls, and it will include what you call it, a booklet with liner notes from the game director and from me as well, and also a poster from Kingdom 80s, and then of course some absolutely gorgeous art by Hanya Grikovic. Do you say it like that?
Don't ask me to pronounce Croatian correctly.
I'm sorry.
Because otherwise the team are gonna have my ass, tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, they're gonna have my ass now. I'm sorry about that. But I'm really looking forward to that, and it will be available through this company called Music on Vinyl. And of course, as soon as we know when it's gonna be released, I'll let everyone know so you can try and get it, because it's gonna be really something. I think I've heard the test press, and it's gonna sound amazing.
Oh, that sounds
really
awesome. But for now, digital only, but we'll see these amazing physical editions further down the line. But still, you can listen to the sweet tunes as of now. So, to celebrate the launch of the soundtrack, we'll spend the next kind of hour talking about your compositions. We'll be listening to some sweet tunes together with the viewers in the chat, and most important of all, you will get the chance to answer some questions from the community that have come in. We've asked Kingdom fans to send in their questions through social media and through a forum, and we'll be going through some of those questions today. At the end of the stream, if we have a few extra minutes, we can also take some live questions from the chat. So if you guys who are watching live have any questions from Andreas, hold on to them and then save them for the end of the stream, and we'll get to them then. And if you're someone who's tuning into the VOD or a rebroadcast of the stream, that ship will have sailed, unfortunately. But I'm keeping my fingers crossed that the viewers who are watching live will have the foresight to ask all of the burning questions that you may come up with while watching. But we're still glad that you're tuning in. So, how are you feeling, Andreas? Are you feeling nervous?
No, not at all.
Perfect. Let's kick things off by listening to one of the tracks that you've composed for the game. This is Warp. All right, that was Warp, composed by Andreas Hald. Andreas, can you tell us something about this track? Where can you hear it in the game?
Well, Warp is actually, well, of course, we have lots of music happening on, certain triggers and events and stuff in the game, but we also have weather states. And I've made a lot of music based on weather states, actually. Music for rainy days, for sunny days, foggy days, cloudy days, whatever. And this is for a rainy day. I hope you feel that when you hear it. And actually, I thought it was fun to bring it on because our favorite developer, Alan, it's his favorite track of the bunch. So
that's nice. That's nice.
we needed to include it.
Yeah. All right, so it's time to dig into some of the questions that we've gotten from the community. Unfortunately, we do not have the usernames of everyone who have sent in their questions. The first one is anonymous, and it sounds like this. How long have you been composing music, and what style/genre is your favorite?
Yeah. Well, I'll try not to make it too long an answer, but I started writing music all the way back when I was like 13 years old and I had my own rock band. That's where I started trying stuff out. But then it just really kicked in during my time at the Royal Academy of Music. And yeah, like I mentioned, it went well there with everything. But then during my third year, I got this injury. I think you call it tinnitus or something like that. So, it's due to overloading, too much playing, too much practicing, basically. I played almost 8 hours a day for a period. And my wrist just couldn't do that anymore. So that break kind of just forced me to dive into other ways of composing. And that just kind of naturally led me to the first score to picture project, where I suddenly had to compose something based on directions and wishes from someone else. And not just, myself and how I wanted to do music. And it was also during that period, as I said, that I got into synthesizers because I needed to find other ways to do it. So it was really fun. And actually, I really struggled with composing in the beginning because I think, I had all the options in the whole world, in terms of tools to compose with just in front of me. And it was kind of like, I don't know, deflating. It was just too much to choose from. I didn't know where to start or where to begin. So it was just like, what the fuck? What am I gonna do about this? But then I had this great teacher at that point who taught me guitar and composition, and he just started giving me very strict limitations of what I could do when I composed music. And that was really it. That was exactly what I needed. Like, I needed limitations to get started. And now, like, I teach once a year at this sound design school here in Denmark, where I teach composition. And I just see that it's one of the most known issues in regards to composition, that it's giving themselves limitations. So we work a lot on that, on how to do that. So yeah, and that's one of the first things I do whenever I start a project. It is like, come up with a concept, and within that concept you'll find limitations. So that's basically how I do it. In regards to it was style and genre, I don't think I have a certain style or genre that I like more than others to compose in. I like challenges a lot. And when you start working on something, on a project or a game or a movie or whatever it is, the music will always turn into its own thing. The more you work on it, the more you iterate, the more you dive into it, the more you give yourself limitations and whatever. And I try on every project that I get involved with to find out, what is this project like? What does it need? How can I help it? But also I try to find out how I can push myself in this project to keep myself going and to keep learning. And to put it simply, and I mean it very humbly, when I sit down to compose, I think my goal is always to create something great, something timeless, something original. But in terms of genre or style, I do like what you would call maybe cinematic music, but not in the sense, not epic music at all. That's not kind of my style. But music that is used for storytelling, music that is very dramatic in the way it tells a story, and music that evokes strong images and strong emotions when you hear it, because that's the kind of music that works great with pictures or games, whatever. Um, so I see myself more as I think I would call it musical dramatist or something like that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, I translate thoughts into musical sounds. Basically, that's what I do, and you know, it's hard to learn, but you learn it as you go along, and it's definitely a skill that you can work on, and you keep refining it. The more interesting people you get to meet and work with, and also I love textures and like tone. So electroacoustic music where everything is about tone. That is something I really like.
Yeah.
I think
I feel
that
like
covers it.
I feel like it's good that you eventually said something about electro, because we can see all of those synthesizers behind you. Like, you're not hiding anything.
No, not at all. But right now they're all out here. As soon as I'm done with this stream.
Oh, they go back into the closet.
No, not all of them, but some of them, because I need floor space for the other instruments for the TV series I'm working on right now. They're going back and forth. Unfortunately, I don't have enough room for everything. So, but of course, yeah, I do love it.
Oh yeah.
There's no denying that.
Of
So
course.
yeah, but of course it's not that I only like electronic music at all. It's definitely a hybrid, and I do like orchestral music as well. And it's great feelings to write something for an orchestra and then hear an orchestra play it. So, it's whatever the project needs, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense, totally. So the next question that we got is also on the theme of composing, where someone asked, what techniques do you use to compose music? And then in parentheses, for example, do you compose like a rough draft of everything at once, or do bits and pieces that just come to you? Or which music part do you start with? Is this the bass or the melody? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, some of it. Not all of it.
Not the magic that happens just in your head.
No, that's a secret. No, but it's just there really is no golden rule or specific recipe that I follow. It's really different from project to project. But I must admit that most often, it starts out with conversation with the developer, directors, editors, and stuff like that, where we talk about the project. We talk about those abstractions that they know of. I can read a script, I can read the storyline, and then based on that, I just start messing around, playing around. Really, that's how I do it. and it's more than often it's just a cool sound that I find when I try and play, on equipment or synthesizers or an instrument, and that specific sound just triggers something in me, and then I sample that sound and it sounds great, and then I just start to build something around that sound. That's how it is most of the time, and then other times it's more a classic approach, you can call it, where I will sit down at the piano or the guitar, and then just fool around with some chords and some melodies. And I would do that if it's a project that really needs a strong theme, or we have lots of themes in it, then I will do it that way. So yeah, it's trial and error, really. That's how I do it, and have fun at the same time. And that's why I collect instruments, because that keeps me going, and that inspires me to play on those instruments. And then I think lastly, there's collaborations at times. Maybe you get involved with a project where there already is a theme, or there have been like a season before or something, and there is some music that you need to respect and deal with in terms of how you create the music. So yeah, there's a lot of different things I do, and it depends on the project how I do it. But also, maybe I mentioned that, but sampling is something I've done like a lot as well. And
can you describe that for someone who is like doesn't know a lot about music?
Yeah, well, you get some microphones or hook them up, and then you have an instrument and you just play something weird on it, and you record it into the computer, and then you can chop it up and do whatever with it afterwards. You can manipulate it in all kinds of ways. and then you program it. You maybe you do that. You don't have to, but I do that sometimes. You can program it and make a little instrument where you can play with that, and it could be as little as just play one tone on an instrument, record that tone in, program it, and then you can play it on your MIDI keyboard like that. But what I do most of the times is try and find interesting sounds and textures, and good performances as well. It doesn't have to be me. I will hire someone better to play instruments than me and record them, and then I will sample it. It's just recording it, putting it into the computer, chopping it up, and then I can drag and drop it into my software and try and move it around and do whatever. So I do that a lot, and I've done that a lot through time. So I have a huge library of my own sounds, and I try to use that as much as possible. So at the beginning of each project, all depending on budget, I spent weeks creating my own samples and material, and then I can use that material to make the music from. So it's just another way of giving myself limitations, really, and it helps keeping things original, not turning too much into bought sample libraries that 1,000 other people owns. It's to have something that's completely mine. And yeah, like I said, sometimes I take it a bit too far, and I do like specific instruments where I just throw everything in this sampler called Contact. Maybe some guys out there know that, by Native Instruments, and then I code it and script it so that you can play it and you can mix different microphones with one another and really make an instrument that you could basically sell.
Wow.
And actually, I've sampled most of my synthesizers as well, and that might seem weird because I have the real deal behind me, but sometimes when I sit here, there's a long way over there sometimes.
Right.
So it's just quicker for me to do mock-ups and open up some instrument here and just play it with MIDI, and then when there's something I like and I need to explore more, I will record the real thing.
Right.
So it's just to save time, basically. And yeah, I've made so much of these instruments, when it's all the way from orchestral samples. Actually, we recorded the whole orchestra and sampled that with drones and bass tones and high chords and tremolo things and effects and all kinds of things. Then I've made instruments based on that, and I've even recorded my mother trying to like blow into bottles and trying to play recorders, and she don't play recorders, but you get something you can use out of it.
Wow. But I feel like, having such a treasure of a library of samples, that's something that would come with a lot of, time and experience in the field, right? When you first start out, you might not have that. You would probably start with some of the free libraries that's out there, or the basic ones. And then when you become pro and you do a lot of different jobs like you do, then you will definitely, have the opportunity to build something that's very personal.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong. I use samples that I buy all the time as well, because you can find great things in there and you can manipulate them still. Great samples, and you take them in, and once you turn a knob or just draw some automations on it, it starts to get your own thing, and you can even maybe reamp it or do whatever with it. So it's not to say that I only use samples, but it's a big part of it, and I can just feel that when I start dragging those samples into a cue that I'm composing, then it just starts to get character and it starts to get interesting. So that would really be like my advice to people starting out, that get a microphone and start recording. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's really simple, and then you get something really interesting out of it.
That's really cool.
And every time I start a project, when I start a fresh new project and I look at that completely blank template or that blank paper, it's absolutely terrifying every time. And I'm sure I'm a nuisance to be around during those periods because it stresses me out so much. And I guess that never changed. So I think that's the same for all. When you just start out and everything's blank, you got a mountain to climb.
Yeah. So we have another question. This one comes in from Nicholas, aka 5NGF, who asks, is the Kingdom 80s soundtrack going to be as peaceful as in New Lands or Two Crowns, or is it going to be more of an electronic high energy type of soundtrack? Kind of a leading question, but I mean, there's something to be said here. You're taking over the baton from previous musicians, amazing musicians who have done Kingdom soundtracks like Amos Roddy and Kalandra, and now it's your turn. Like, will you stick to the formula, or will you do something new?
I think it's gonna be something else. Well, they tell me, but I think that this game is different from previous Kingdom games. You know, while of course it maintains a lot of the same things from Kingdom, it is still Kingdom. The whole engine is Kingdom by heart, but I think Kingdom 80s is a bit of a different beast, really, and I think it's down to the era that we are trying to portray here. You know, the 80s relies heavily on memories and references of 1980s Americana, and it was just, it was fast-paced, acid wash jeans, neon colors, BMX bikes, and just in your face with most things, and also, a lot of things happened music-wise back then. We had this shift in technology, and we got some new sonic environments that we could check out. So we naturally had to come up with something else for Kingdom 80s. So it's the 80s, but it's Kingdom 80s, hopefully, in regards to music. So I really feel that it has something unique to it, and it's just not just run-of-the-mill 80s music, because at the same time, it needed to reference the era extremely clearly. That's one of the challenges that we had with it. And I know that before I got involved with the project, or at least I've been told from Magnus, our sound whiz on this game, that there were a lot of discussion about, what the 80s in a Kingdom setting should sound like. And I completely get that, because it's a tough one to crack, because the 80s sounds in a certain way for you, and then it sounds in a different way to me, based on what we listen to, where we were brought up, and our personal experiences and stuff like that. And then we have this Kingdom game, which is the franchise, and how do you balance that? And I just remember when I got involved with these discussions, it came up a lot of time that the music needed to be Kingdom-like. And then, I started making a lot of music for it, and we got it in the early stages of the game. And then at one point, we kind of like thought that we need to reference the 80s a bit more, so maybe it has become a little too Kingdom-like now.
Mm-hmm.
So we started twisting it up a little bit, and taking some cliches in and be more happy with them, in order to like reference the 80s a bit more musically. So yeah, in the end as well, I think I just needed to dive into myself and try to trust my instinct and what music that felt natural for me, and what came from within me, because it's not easy to try and imitate something else. And I tried a lot of different styles as well for this one. We had electronic, we had some glam rock, we had some hip hop, we tried a lot of different things. But I also had to think of that in a game you need a lot of minutes of music, and you need to be able to deliver that. So it needs to be some music that you feel comfortable with as well. So I think that Kingdom 80s is not just the music, but the game is paced differently. You can correct me if you feel I'm wrong, and I think it's really cool. But I think that one just needs to embrace that and go with it, really, because I think that we've gone all the way on all aspects, like in design, storyline, and music and audio, to create an 80s game in all those areas. And that's, if you ask me, that's how it should be. We don't want half measures here. So, but with that being said, it is electronic, and it is, we got some fast pace in there as well, but we also got ambient stuff naturally.
Yeah, there are some low moments in there as well. Moments of calm and peace.
Absolutely. And, not all music has gated reverbs or snares and kick drums. And there's much more music in the game than what you can hear on the released soundtrack. And the soundtrack differs a bit actually from the in-game music. Some tracks are the same, but much has been tailored for the release because it's thought for more like a listener purpose. So it's been arranged a bit differently, it's been mixed differently, it's been mastered differently. And I've tried to put the soundtrack that you can hear right now together in a way that gives a good listening experience if you listen to it like back to back, basically. So yeah, I think you need to play the game really to get the full experience of it, and not just listen to the soundtrack.
Yeah. But we are going to listen to a part of the soundtrack right now. We have another track coming up. This one is called Flourish. Let's have a listen. That was Flourish. I think that's like my favorite track of the ones that we're playing to you tonight on the stream. Andreas, can you tell us a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, actually, it's yet another Weather State track. So this is from one of the fresh days, we call it, in the game. And it's I think it was because that someone sent me this meme with what's his name, the guy from Baywatch. I can't remember him.
I'm not an 80s kid, so I will not be able to help you with this.
Yeah, well, I know his name from Baywatch, Mitch Buchanan. That's what's his character's name? I can't remember it right now.
Is it Hasselhoff? No.
Yes, of
course,
it
is Hasselhoff.
Yeah, he sent this great meme, 80s meme. And then I just came to listen to some Knight Rider music, and then I need to do something like that. So it's inspired by Knight Rider, and then it turns into something maybe a bit Cindy Lauberish, I'd say, at the end there with the electro bass. So yeah, that's how it sounds.
It sounds really good, if you ask me. So we're gonna dig back into the questions that have been asked by the community. We have asked the Kingdom fans to send in some questions for you, Andreas, the composer of Kingdom 80s, and at the end of the stream, we might be able to pick a few ones up from the chat as well. So the next one, anonymous once again. how do you go about making a soundtrack for a game while it's still in the early stages of development? What information were you given that allowed you to create the perfect ambiances to accompany the levels sight unseen?
Yeah, well, that's just hard. It's tough to do that, and but I mentioned some of it already. But the storyline. You have the storyline, and you have some highlights and storylines from different levels as well. At least the main points of it, and I use that a lot, and I refer to that a lot, and I keep referring to it all the way through actually. And you just really got to get your imagination going with that. You read that, and then you need to think about how could that sound, how's this gonna look like. But you can really drag a lot of info and inspiration out from a storyline. And then, like I said, the conversations. We've had a lot of conversations, especially with Alan early on.
And Alan is our game designer in the game, for those who don't know.
Yes, exactly. With him and Magnus, we had some long and fun talks online. Maybe a bit longer than they had to be. But yeah, talking about mechanics and stuff like that and what to do. And I've just developed some sort of language that I can dissect what they're saying and how I can translate that into something that is sounds and music. And then a little bit later, then you start to get maybe some early mock-ups, some still photos, and design ideas, and you can really look at them and help you get into the vibe of the thing. And the mechanics as well. I've said that. But yeah, it is really hard. And if you're finding it hard to read a storyline or whatever and get inspired, then you could maybe start talking about references to other games and stuff like that. But I would pick that as the last resort, really, to do that. So yeah, what I got, that was just more generally, but what I got from the King Eighties was the storyline and some references on how the 80s look in Kingdom Eighties. Just something pulled down from Google, basically. And then I got design mockups, and then as the game got built, I started to get short videos that I could try and make some music for, and then of course I got access to the game itself and the editor, and I could start playing it myself and trying different things out. But it is really hard. And right now, just something else. I'm doing music for a TV series, and it's really common on TV series that you make almost all the music before you see any footage at all. Because you have to deliver this music library, with some action music, some love music, some transportation music, so that the editors can use that to edit the episodes. So, you kind of learn to dissect all those abstract things like conversations and reading a script, and also, maybe you learn how to look on what you say, character descriptions. Maybe some landscapes are described in the script, maybe some temperatures, maybe it's a cold room, it's a warm room, it's snowy outside, whatever, and that naturally just turns something on in you. It gives you some ideas on what to do. Is it a field where you have wind blowing across it, or is it a snow-covered landscape? Is it mountains? If you are a sound designer or a composer, I think that just naturally gets your mind going, really, and you get some ideas on how that should sound. So it's just those abstractions, you need to work with those.
Yeah. I think it sounds so interesting because I thought that working with film and TV, you would have a little bit more information than you would working with games, but it actually sounds quite similar.
It is quite similar, yeah. Of course, then when they, there are different timelines on every project, but then you start to get something called dailies with the footage that they recorded on a certain day, then they upload it, and you can just see really raw footage from the sets.
All right, so you can see something at least.
You can see something there, but at that point you most likely already have delivered the library. So.
Right. Oh shit.
Yeah, but it is really hard, but it's getting more and more common that you also on movies that you make the music before you see anything, because sometimes the director maybe wants to bring music on set or wants to hear it on their headset to get in a certain mood or let the actors hear some music. So I think we just have to get used to it by now, that we need to be able to write music before seeing anything. And then, of course, later on, you get something back, you get pictures back, and then you can start iterate on the whole thing and start making it really flow and look good and score to picture.
Right. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. All right, we have another question.
Hit it.
Might be from the same person. It says another similar question is, how do you get inspiration, or what music systems do you use? Like, how do you decide which key to use, or how a certain melody line should go, and how the harmony contrasts with it? Do you think of everything at once, or do just one part at a time? Big question.
Yeah, I can try to elaborate a bit because I've said some of the things, but to sound really boring, my gear and my instruments, or it sounds so nerdy, but playing instruments and playing synthesizer and whatever, that's just something that really fuels my inspiration, and I need to create an environment around me as well. And you know this, Elizabeth, as well.
Yeah, you've told me.
Yeah, I've told you. But I find it really hard to compose music for, like, when greeds attack you, for instance, while it's hammering in with sunshine from the outside. So I need to block out the lights and turn on some soft lamps and like get into the mood. Like now we're doing something action or something suspense. So I really need to get in the zone. So that inspires me, and like sampling, like I said, inspires me. And yeah, something about music system. What I use for music system, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's meant, but if we're geeking out,
Please do go ahead.
I write my music in Logic. I guess that's what this person is asking for. And I really like working in Logic. I work really fast in it because I worked in it for so many years. I used to work in Pro Tools, another DAW, or DAW, as you call it.
Mm-hmm.
But after I moved to Stockholm and I started working with some other composers that worked in Logic, and actually it was Logic 7, which is like way old and like really hard to work in. I switched to Logic because of that, because we needed to be aligned a bit more. And I'm really glad I did, because I think it's really, really good to work in. And I still use Pro Tools though, for like editing and mixing jobs, because it's way better than Logic for mixing and editing. So, but to create music, write music, work with MIDI files and stuff like that, Logic. But if you work only with audio, then I like to work with Pro Tools.
Right.
So those are like my main DAWs. And regarding what key to choose, that's a really good question.
Do you have a favorite key? I know some musicians have a favorite key.
I do.
Which one?
I'm not gonna say.
What? Do I have to like listen to the soundtrack and try to extrapolate which one you use the most?
It's E flat.
E flat. Oh.
Yeah, I like that. But some instruments just sound better in certain keys. Sound better if you use open strings. So you write with that in mind. You know what instruments, what key they like to work in, and then when you play on instruments, maybe you get an idea, and that idea just sounds weird in another key. And I can't quite explain it, but I guess it's just because it just resonates much better in certain keys, that particular instrument. So that kind of decides it for me, what key to choose. And other times there would be some toned sound design, and you don't want to clash with the sound design, so you need to compose in regards to that. And I always try to work as close with the sound design as I can to make sure that we don't conflict with one another. And I work really close with Magnus on this one, because we have a lot of toned sound design as well in Kingdom Eighties. And we had some clashes, so we just need to deal with them when we found them. And regarding melody and harmony, I think the choices that I choose in regards to melody and harmony is all rooted in all the things that I've already been through, all the things that inspire me. and it comes from dissecting all these things that you talk with directors about and you talk with developers about, the things that you've seen, the pictures you've seen, the abstractions that you've encountered, and the storylines you've read, and the instruments that you've chosen to use. Then you just go at it. You start seeing yourself as the aforementioned musical dramatist.
Yeah.
And then you make use of something called tension and release, which kind of it gives itself, and it comes in many forms. Like you make music move around. That's what you use tension and release for. So basically, you build up some musical tension, whether it be with the chords or with just the melody. You build up some tension, and then after some time, you resolve that tension, and it relaxes again. And for listeners, that moment with some unrest, that will just create an expectation that it will resolve itself at one point, and they will have some expectations when they listen to it that this drama will stop again. So you use tension and release through harmony, melody, dynamics, rhythms, and even form actually. So I think that's how I go about with the harmony and melody.
It's so geeky. I listen to some music
So
podcasts. I listen to a music podcast where a video game journalist dissects songs. It's called Strong Songs, and he also talks about this tension and release. So I actually recognize that from his talks as well. And when you start getting into that mindset and you start listening to music in that kind of way, you kind of start to be able to pick it up. I would say that. When you listen to, modern EDM music and you're like, oh, here comes the drop. That's the kind of release, right? You've been building up the tension and then the release comes.
Yeah, exactly. And then, when you start to dive into it, you start to realize how big a subject that is and how much you can do and how many things you can grab onto to make a simple melody even more interesting. So you just got to learn that and just start, learning one skill at a time with that, and then your melodies will start to sound more interesting, and the same goes with harmony.
Yeah. Wow. I wish I knew how to do half of that.
I can learn you. I can send you a PowerPoint afterwards.
A PowerPoint? Is that how you learn?
That's how I teach.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So we have another question that has come in from Vicky. What is your favorite game soundtrack? Either one you've worked on or haven't, and why is it your favorite?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give a boring answer, maybe. But I have to admit that I just really enjoyed The Last of Us Part 1. I just think that the music in that one is just implemented extremely well. Like, where and where not to have music, that's just so really good balanced. And I also like that it's so incredibly intimate and so emotional, and that all the action parts, they're not that high paced, but really understated, which to me at least, that's just like made it so much more unsettling when you had that, and much more real in a sense. And yeah, of course, just not to give anything away, but if I don't think anyone hasn't played it, but the end scene and the end play that you have there, that was just like amazing. Like, I got all choked up when I played it, and I think that's the first time playing a video game that I got really that much emotional about it. But that was really good, I think. And then also from an indie game called Limbo, made by Playhead. That's actually one of my good friends, Martin Stee, who did the music for that one. And I really like that as well, because it's just, it's eerie, but it's beautiful, and it's ambient, and it contains so much texture, which, by the way, all of Martin's music does. And you can find that soundtrack on Spotify as well, and you can play the game on Steam. And I know how Martin works, and he works a lot with samples. I spent so much time crafting just the right sounds, and then throw it all in there and start twisting everything around. So yeah, I like that as well.
2 bangers. Very good.
Yeah.
I think it was a great answer. So we'll be listening to one more track from the Kingdom 80s soundtrack composed by you. And the next one coming up is going to be named after the 4th level of the game, New Lands Mall. So that was New Land Small. And that obviously plays in the level New Land Small. What was your thoughts when composing this one?
Yeah, it's being used kind of like an intro track for a level. So it needed to have that feel for it, and kind of pop maybe a little bit more. So that's where you would hear it. And also, I'm using elements from it and variations from it in some cutscenes actually, that relates to that level in the game. So that's where you could find it. So you need to go all the way until the 4th level until you can hear that.
But that's a trip worth taking though, because the level 4 is absolutely gorgeous and one of the best looking ones, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we have a couple more questions that came in from the Kingdom fans leading up to today. This one is, when composing for Kingdom, what were your personal do's and don'ts? The things you knew you had to do and things you knew you had to avoid.
Yeah. It's a really good question and really hard to answer, I think. Well, I definitely knew that very early on that I had to record everything outside the computer. So that's the thing I really thought that I had to do, like keeping everything analog and organic, and also human and drifting a little bit by playing things myself and not keeping everything 100% aligned. And then I wanted to stay really true to the decade, making use of the same gear from that era, and maybe, and we've talked about this before, you could be limited by a drum machine that had mediocre samples because they weren't that evolved at that time, or maybe you had a sequencer with only 16 steps or 8 steps even, or maybe a synthesizer that was hard to program. So I wanted to keep that feel in my music, by limiting myself, using the same gear and trying not to cheat really. So I guess that would be my do's and don'ts. Use original gear, don't cheat.
I feel like that ties into what you've been talking about earlier about challenging yourself and setting limitation in order to make something good. Like this all has a common theme, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also on every project, I try to give myself like this personal success criterion that I need to fulfill, and that's just basically to keep myself going. And it could be like trying to, it's just my own personal goal, like maybe learning a new instrument, recording a new orchestra, using a new microphone, arranging in a different way, or like on this one, keeping everything outside of the computer for as long as humanly possible. So that's something I do as well. But I'm having a hard time to think of anything else that I thought that I really shouldn't do.
Yeah.
I like to keep everything open.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Should we leave it at that then, or do you want?
Yeah, let's leave it with that.
All right.
They got one do's and one don't.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question comes from Najimi, and they write this: Kingdom New Lands and Kingdom Two Crowns had an amazing soundtrack that best described what you felt when you were playing the game. A nostalgic, homey feeling, incredibly harsh anxiety, and peacefully tranquil victory. What did you consider in making the music and how it impacted the player?
Yeah, I agree 100% that those soundtracks were amazing, and the games were amazing as well. And we've already talked a little bit about it, with some of the struggles that we had in how to choose to portray the 80s in a Kingdom environment. And I think that, I know that most definitely I've tried to keep the vibe of Kingdom in the music, but at the same time, we had to reference something with some clear references, which just made us having to make use of some certain musical elements in the music. Or at least, that's how we decided to do it, basically. So what I've worked from is that the soundtrack should be something that enhances the playing experience and try not to step too much on the player's toes when they play the game. And it should be there to make the game feel a bit more immersive than if it's not there. And I've tried to make it cool and interesting and evolving within the boundaries that we also have within the core of Kingdom. So that's just like when you start adding music into the editor and you play a little around, then you quickly realize if something works or if it doesn't work, and you find out that the game needs the music it needs and what it doesn't need. You kind of sense that really when you start trying things out. But then again, it's once again it's down to the challenge of having a really, what you say, bombastic and fast-paced era that you're portraying, and at the same time you have a Kingdom game. So we tried a lot of different things with this, and we just decided on the things that we have in the game now. That's what we felt worked best with what we were trying to say with the game. And like I said, Kingdom 80s, it's a Kingdom game, but it's a game in its own right as well. So it has different pace, and I'm not saying that all music is four on the floor and busy and fast paced. It has slow pace as well, darkness, lightness, seriousness, happiness, tranquility as well, and everything in between, I'd say. And again, there's much more music in game than what you can hear on the released soundtrack. And there are many variations of the different tracks in the game as well. And the tracks on the soundtracks are arranged differently because they're aimed towards listening. So once again, I think you should play it to experience it, and then we can have a discussion about it afterwards.
But I have played it, and something that I have noticed, and some other people have noticed as well, who have gotten to put their hands on it early, is that there is a little bit more of a horror vibe in Kingdom 80s than in the previous game. Do you agree, and is that reflected in the soundtrack somehow?
Yeah, at points. I don't think all the way through, because it actually was important for me not to make it all horror-ish all the way through, because during the daytime, we have these kids running around on their bikes, and it might be a sunny day, it might be a summer camp, and they are, even though they have some terrible nights, they do have some great days as well, having fun, doing all kinds of weird things that you can play in the game. So we have all those happy moments as well. But yeah, I guess so. I just get inspired when I see the greed. When I see the blood moon. It just calls for something darker. And so I've done that. And yeah, I haven't mentioned that at all because I have cheated a little bit, maybe actually. I haven't only used synths from the 80s. I have this huge modular synth behind me.
That's the blinking one.
That's the blinking one down there in the bottom. Yeah, it's a huge electric bill, basically. But I just found out that I had a hard time creating something textual enough for for night times and for when the greed attacks and stuff like that, using those kind of basic synthesizers. So I needed something else. So I decided that it was okay to invite the modular synth into the family, and do some darker textural stuff on that one. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed that.
Awesome. All right. Last of the pre-sourced questions that we have for this stream. What did you enjoy most about this process?
Yeah. And once again, this is not to get cheap points, but it really has been meeting all you guys at Raw Fury and getting to know you and getting to work with you, because I've been giving, and we'll have to see if that was a good idea, but I've been giving so much artistic freedom on this, and in return of that trust, I grew so high ambitions for this project, and I threw everything in there. So it paid out in that regards, but also enjoyable. It was really fun to write and produce all the music in such an analog way. That's been really fun, and that's not often that you get to do that 100%. So that's been really fun to spend time out here and not so much time over here. And maybe lastly, the implementation process, I think that's worth mentioning actually, because it makes me feel in a great way. It makes me feel not just like a composer, but like a developer at the same time, and that's a really good feeling. And the feeling you get when you've made some music and you threw it in the editor and you try to play the game and it works as intended. That's just like it's the best feeling.
It's the feeling of that programmers hopefully have.
Yeah, I hope so.
So that was the last of the pre-sourced questions that we had. If anyone in the live chat right now has any more questions from Andreas, now is your chance. If you are tuning in through a VOD or a rebroadcast, I am sorry, we will not be taking your questions because we are actually not live anymore. But now is your time, chat, if there is anything. Can I ask you something while we give the chat a chance to ask a question? Which one is your favorite character in the game?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think it might be the Tinkerer. Yeah, I think it's the Tinkerer. It's a close call between the Tinkerer and the Wiz.
How come?
I don't know why. I think it's the swirl that the Tinkerer does. I really like that, and that she's so cool. She can just, create stuff. And it's the same with the Wiz, that he can program stuff and make stuff work again. I really like that, and I like nerds.
We identify with the nerds. You were an 80s kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you a nerd or a rocker, or what was your clique? You were in a rock band. Was that what you were doing?
I was a rocker. Yeah, I was. Yeah, but at the same time, I was a nerd because I spent so much time playing music.
Yeah.
And we had this.
So you were a secret nerd, maybe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It kind of shifted a bit. We had this rehearsal. I come from a very, very small town in Denmark, and we had this house in the middle of nowhere, where some guy built, I think, 8 rehearsal studios, and then all kinds of kids got out there and acted crazy because there were no parents around or anything. So I basically lived there from when I was 13 years old and played music and skipped school and went out there and practiced guitar instead. That's how I did it.
We actually do have a question coming from Destoria, who asks, Mr. Hald, what is your favorite time signature, and are there any tracks in odd time signatures in 80s?
Yes, there are, and there are also tracks without any time signatures. There's a lot of them actually. Much of the ambient stuff, of course, don't have time signatures, but sometimes they get into a grid and then out of it again, and they shift a little bit around. But we also have something in 5/4. But I think my favorite would be 7/8. Yeah, I like that, and that's that comes from my jazz time. I like to play in that one.
How can you count to 7/8, or like how does that go for someone who doesn't know?
You just count to 7.
Okay, that's it, and then you can start over.
Yeah, exactly, and then you start over. And then of course we are very used to like 4/4. So it's really hard to learn to improvise over 7/8, but it's really fun, because once you get it, it's so rewarding. But I also like, and it's a very slick time signature, 6/8. I really like that as well, because you can shift between like a triplet feel or a more what do you call it in English, quarter feel, and that's really cool to shift between those two. So yeah, I think that would be my favorites.
Awesome. We had a question pop up earlier in the chat that I remember. It was when you mentioned that you were in a rock band. Did you have long hair?
No, not long hair. I had hair to here. And then I wore like a headband.
A headband. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So you had an 80s look.
I did, and then pop it behind the ears as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. And what was your instrument in the band?
It was guitar. Yeah, I played guitar. and I have a degree as jazz guitar. So I've been playing guitar all my life, and I started playing guitar because my brother played guitar, and he had really long hair, like all the way down to his butt.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Vicky asks, what was the band called?
Oh, I'm not sure I should say that. That's really embarrassing. But it was called Silver Spirit. Yeah. Did I
I
mention
don't think
we were 13
that
years old?
embarrassing.
You know, some of the names that we thought about were like Bad Skunks.
Ooh. Sounds a bit rock though, but yeah.
It's a bit rock, yeah. But we were really inspired by this band named Bush, if anyone knows that.
Not me. Maybe someone who's watching.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be like, oh yeah, that one. Damn. Andreas, you got taste. I can tell you my embarrassing high school rock band name. We were called Marshmallow Pancake, and I'm not ashamed of it.
And how old were you at that time?
We were, I don't know, 16 maybe? Yeah,
okay.
It was good times. What? No, you can't go oof at me when I share something vulnerable from my past. God damn it.
Oh no, I think Silver Spirit is even worse. You know, it's to be fair, you know, it's named after a Rolls Royce called Silver Spirit.
All right.
It was the drummer's dad. The drummer's dad, he was really into cars, and he had a book of old Rolls Royce cars, and we found that name, and Silver Spirit, we like that, so that's what we went for.
That's awesome. All right.
And I'm proud to say that you can't find any music out there with it.
There wasn't enough MySpace back then to put all of your music out there. No. All right. The chat is loving all of this 80s trivia. I like that we've been able to go down memory lane while at the same time talking about Kingdom 80s and the soundtrack, which is available now for streaming on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Amazon. Did I miss one?
YouTube. Yeah, and we said that. Yeah. Tidal.
Right. So all of those platforms will now have the Kingdom 80s soundtrack. You can listen to it right now. But the game you cannot play yet, because we just revealed that the release is going to be on June 26th on Steam. Consoles coming later, but you should go to Steam and wishlist that right now so you don't miss the launch day. I can also tell you all that there will be a demo at Steam Next Fest, so you can even get a little taste of the game before it launches. It's going to be super exciting. We're so excited to share Kingdom 80s with you guys finally. It's been a long ride, but it's been an exciting one. It's been filled with neon and it's been filled with bikes and everything good from the 80s. So yeah, it's getting close, and I'm very, very excited about it.
Oh my.
Awesome. Andreas, thank you so much for spending
thank you for having me.
Yeah, for spending this hour with me and answering all of our players' questions. We love the soundtrack, and we can't wait to see the physical editions whenever they come out.
I promise to shout out, and then you can share it with everyone.
Awesome. So I will take us out of the stream with another look at our date reveal trailer, which dropped yesterday. Thank you so much for watching, and we can't wait to get Kingdom 80s into your hands very, very soon. June 26th, mark it in your calendars and Rolodexes. Bye!